What if I told you World War II was not only won on battlefields, but in a room full of code breakers, maps, radio signals, and one secret mission so sensitive that almost nobody could know it was happening? For years, the public saw tanks, planes, and generals, but behind the scenes, another war was being fought in silence. A war of intelligence, a war of deception, and one of its most important operations helped change the entire course of the conflict. This is the story of the hidden planning, the code breaking, and the daring mission that helped turn the tide of World War II. And the most shocking part is this: many people have heard of the battles. Very few know the operation that helped make victory possible. To understand why this mattered, we have to go back to a time when the war looked almost unstoppable. Nazi Germany had swept across Europe. Britain stood alone. The United States had not yet entered the war. The Allies needed an edge, and fast. Not just more soldiers, not just more weapons. They needed information. They needed to know what the enemy would do before the enemy did it. That is where code breaking came in. At Bletchley Park in England, a group of brilliant mathematicians, linguists, chess players, and puzzle solvers worked in total secrecy. Their target was the German Enigma machine, which created coded messages the Germans believed could not be cracked. But slowly, step by step, the Allies began to read pieces of enemy traffic. These fragments were later known as ultra-intelligence. It was not magic. It was patient work, sharp minds, and relentless pressure. And once that information started flowing, a new kind of war became possible. The Allies could begin to see enemy movements before they happened. U-boats in the Atlantic, Luftwaffe plans, army deployments, supply routes. But there was still a problem. Intelligence alone could not win the war. Knowing where the enemy was one thing. Hitting them at the right moment was another. So the Allies began to plan something much larger. By 1943 and into 1944, they were preparing for one of the most important operations in history, the invasion of Nazi-occupied Europe. We know it today as D-Day and Operation Overlord. But before a single soldier landed on the beaches of Normandy, a secret mission had already started shaping the outcome. It was not one mission, really. It was a web of missions, deception operations, code breaking, air attacks, resistance work, false radio traffic, dummy tanks, fake armies. The goal was simple in theory and incredibly difficult in practice. Make the Germans believe the real invasion would happen somewhere else. And they did. One of the most famous parts of this deception was Operation Fortitude. The Allies built a phantom army in the eyes of German intelligence. They created fake landing sites, fake equipment, and even fake communication patterns. General George Patton, one of the Allies' most famous commanders, was used as part of the deception because the Germans expected him to lead the main attack. Every detail was designed to mislead. But here is the part that makes this story so powerful. The Germans were not just fooled by lies. They were fooled by the absence of truth. Because the code breakers and intelligence officers were also learning how to use silence as a weapon. If the Allies intercepted German information showing that the enemy believed the attack would come at Pas-de-Calais instead of Normandy, they knew the deception was working. If German defenses were kept pinned in the wrong place, then the real invasion had a chance to succeed. Still, none of this would have mattered without the men and women who risked everything to carry out the mission itself. On the night before the landings, Allied forces began one of the largest seaborne invasions ever attempted. Soldiers crossed the English Channel under constant threat from mines, artillery, aircraft, and rough seas. Airborne troops dropped behind enemy lines to seize bridges and disrupt German movement. Naval forces bombarded the coast. Resistance fighters cut rail lines and communications. Every part of the plan was connected. And yet the real secret was not just the size of the invasion. It was the precision of the timing. The Allies had spent months studying weather, tides, German habits, radar coverage, and troop placement. The intelligence war had given them a rare chance to attack with a better understanding of the battlefield than any force in history had ever had before. That does not mean success was guaranteed. Far from it. The landings were still brutal. Omaha Beach became a nightmare of gunfire and chaos. Soldiers died by the thousands. The victory was not easy, clean, or instant. But the deeper story is this. Without the hidden planning before the invasion, the losses could have been far worse, and the operation might have failed. So what was the secret mission that won World War II? If we are being precise, it was not one single act. It was the coordinated secret effort that combined code breaking, deception, and military planning to make the Normandy invasion possible. The breaking of German codes, the feeding of false information, the fake army in southeast England, the sabotage by resistance fighters, and the careful timing of the landings all work together like pieces of one giant machine. That is the real revelation. World War II was not won by force alone. It was won by intelligence, by patience, by deception, by people who would never become famous, people who solved puzzles in silence, people who transmitted false signals, people who knew that one message, one intercepted plan, or one carefully hidden troop movement could change history. And it did. The Allied victory in Europe did not happen because the Germans were unbeatable and then suddenly defeated. It happened because the Allies learned how to outthink them. They turned information into power. They turned secrets into strategy. And they used one of the most secret operations of the war to help open the door to liberation. So the next time you hear about D-Day, remember this. Before the first boots touched the beaches, the battle had already begun in code rooms, in planning centers, and in the shadows of deception. Sometimes the most important mission in war is the one the world barely sees. And sometimes that hidden mission changes everything.